I'm going to demonstrate for you about the simplest possible model you could build with Sheetless, and that concerns a credit card, and you're worried about how big the balance on that credit card might get over 2 years. You can probably copy everything I'm going to do here simply by pausing the video as we go along. The first thing you'll want to do is go and get yourself an account for Sheetless. So this is the Sheetless website. Go to pricing and select the free community edition. When you've completed that and got an account, when you log in you'll come to this dashboard. This will be blank initially because you won't have any models, and the first thing you're going to want to do is to create a new project. Give the project a name and hit create. This takes you to the projects landing page. A project is simply a collection of related models that share the same settings. We're going to open this project. And here's the blank working space on which you're going to build a model. First thing we need to do is set up the timescale for this, and we do that under project settings. You can choose to set up real time or simply a number of undefined time periods. We want to go from 1 to 24, so we actually need 23 steps. Save those time settings and we're ready to start building the model. The card balance is something known as a stock. Stock is simply a collection of material or things that fills up and drains away over time. Cash and debt are very common examples, but other stocks include things like water in a bathtub, populations of people, or in business contexts, numbers of customers and staff. To add a stock to your model, right-click and select Create Stock from the drop-down list, or simply hit the S key on your keyboard. This is the stock object, and you can think of this as being a bit like a tank that's going to hold whatever it is you're interested in, and the thing we're interested in here is the credit card balance. So over on the right hand side in the inspector, give it a name, and that's the name that will be used by other variables in the model to calculate things. But there's an extra little bit of text as well called the stub that we can use just to enrich that name a little bit, make it easier to understand what it is. And I'm going to put the units in there so that our card balance is in dollars. And below that is the formula, and for a stock the formula simply sets the initial value. The value for every period after that will depend on how much gets added and how much gets taken away. I've got $500 of debt on my credit card as we start. Click on the workspace to close that inspector panel. Now we need to fill that card balance with the amount that we spend each month, and of course the interest that we get charged on that credit card balance. And we do that with something called a flow. So over to the left of the card balance, right click and select Create Flow, or once again we can simply hit the, in this case, the F key. This is going to be the amount we add to the card balance, and that will be in dollars per month. The units of flows are always the same as the stock per time period, and we're going to be adding $250 of debt every month to our credit card. Now you can think of this thing as being a pipe that's carrying that debt into the credit card. So you click and hold and drag that arrowhead until it joins onto the card balance, and as soon as you let go, the card balance itself starts rising at $250 per month. We're going to be paying off that debt each month as well. So on the right, hit F again for another flow, and this is going to be repayments, again in dollars per month, and give that a value of 200. Take the tail of that flow rate now and attach that to the stock, and immediately you can see that the card balance increases at a much slower rate. You may want to fix a scale for that card balance. Click away to close the inspector. Add a table for reporting what the model is doing, so hit T on the keyboard, and we're going to add the card balance to that. So go near to the object, and in that cloud click and hold and drag that link into the table. Do the same for the card balance and for the repayments. And you can see exactly how this stock and flow is behaving. The value for the stock at the start of any period is the value it was at the start of the previous period plus what was added minus what was taken away. I'll explain the sketched and simulated columns in just a moment. Now we're going to have to pay interest on this credit card balance, and to do that we're going to do just ordinary calculations now. We're not doing this fancy stock and flow thing. So somewhere below repayments, hit V on your keyboard to get a variable. Notice that I can just drag that name around the variable, and that variable is going to be the interest rate, and I'm paying a pretty high interest rate on this credit card of 3% a month. We don't actually want that particular chart in this case because this interest rate is just going to be a constant amount, so we'll just toggle that chart off to make that disappear. And we now need to calculate what the interest charge is going to be. So underneath the card balance, hit V again, and this is the interest charge, and this is going in dollars per month. And this we're going to have to calculate. So get the name out of the way underneath the variable there. Now what we do in Sheetless to calculate things is we connect up the things that we need to do the calculation with. So near interest rate, hover in the cloud, click and hold, and drag that arrow until it connects with the interest charge. Do the same from the card balance to the interest charge. Now we've got connected items for the interest charge, but the links are showing red to indicate that they're not currently being used. And to calculate that, we need to multiply those two items together. You can see on the inspector for that variable that the two items are shown below the formula. So just click on the first one, hit the multiply key, and click the second item, the interest rate. One thing we seem to have forgotten to do here is actually to divide this by 100. We start by paying 3% on the $500 debt on the card, so that's $15 per month, but it keeps on increasing as the debt increases. Notice the formula here is a simple natural language formula. It's not some kind of spreadsheet formula like $2 multiplied by $3. So it's much easier to figure out what the formula is actually saying. It's always a good idea to document your models as you go along. You can actually include notes in the variable, and you can also add a note to the model itself. Create a text box. If you want to move things, simply drag around them, click and hold on any of the items themselves and move it around. These notes use something called Markdown to allow you to do some simple formatting, and we can give it some colour. Now the main thing that adds to our card balance, of course, is how much we actually spend each month. So over to the left, add a variable, and this is spending in dollars per month. And now this number actually changes from month to month. So set a scale here that goes up to 500. And rather than put a formula in here, we're actually just going to sketch what's actually been happening to how much we've been charging to our credit card over the last 12 months. And we're looking to what might happen over the next 12 months. So sketch a pattern here, and the thing we really want to do is have a nice holiday. We're going to spend $500 for a couple of months, and then pull that spending back down to something more normal. So that's actually put values into that spending chart, and you can see what those values are in the data drop down at the lower part of the inspector. Literally sketched those real world values into the column here, and the software doesn't know how to calculate what the simulated values are, so it's just said, oh well, I'll simply assume that the simulated values are the same as the sketched values. If you do put a formula in there, let's put 250 in, that overrides that sketched data, and the model will use that 250 value, but we don't want that. This is the value we are going to use. You can of course also paste real world data into that sketched series. That's a very common thing that you want to do. So now the amount that we add to our credit card balance each month is not this 250 number, it's the sum of these two items, the spending and the interest charge. So drag a link from spending up to the add to balance, and a link from interest charge to add to balance. Move the chart out of the way for that, and this is now going to be, instead of that 250, it's going to be spending plus the interest charge. Those two numbers together add up to rather more than the 250 that we originally assumed, so it looks like we're going to have to repay rather more than the $200 per month. that we thought might be enough. So $250 per month being repaid has mostly kept the balance under control, apart from this spike where we've spent that extra money on the holiday that we were going to have. Now, we're not happy with how big that card balance is going to get, so we're going to want to explore ways that we might get that card balance under control. But it's useful to have that as a reference. So click on the card balance. We're not going to be working with the formula or the sketch for the moment. We're going to be actually looking at this data. And something you can do is copy that simulated time series, put it in the sketch, and that will now be a reference for things that we might change. So we could look in here and see what would happen if we paid off in 280. And now we've got a comparison between our base case, which was paying off 250 per month, and a sensitivity where we're paying off 280 per month. Let's put that back as it was, and we can actually compare some scenarios here. Click on Manage Scenarios. We'll add a scenario, and this one we'll call Lower Normal Spending, and we'll show that as let's show that as a purple time series in our charts. Now when we click on this item, we can change any of these other items that are already in the model. So let's change the amount that we expect to spend over the next few months. In the chart for spending, drag a lower rate of spending for the period when we're not going on holiday, and we can see that that's going to make a significant improvement to what that card balance may be. You might want to see what would happen if we just change the repayments for the future. So let's add another scenario. And in this scenario, we're going to actually change the amount that we pay off each month. But we can't do that in the past, we can only do that in the future. So change the formula for repayments to 250 plus step 50, 13. Notice that you can't change anything else when you're in a scenario. You can't move things around or edit the model itself. All you can do is change the values or the sketches inside the variables. So click back on the base case, we change the scale on that to 500, and now we can compare those scenarios on the same charts. You can also add a larger scale chart and drag that card balance onto the chart. A further useful thing that you can do is drag the pointer on the time bar to specific points in time to see exactly what the numbers are doing from period to period. And you may also want to zoom in and have a look at the detail of what's happening over a much shorter period of time. Say around the time of that holiday, just how big does your credit card balance get, and how do the values change from month to month over that period. Now, as you build these models, they are always saved in your browser, provided your browser cache doesn't get cleared for any reason. You can always come back and continue working on the model, but you probably want to actually save this up to the Sheetless server. So you do that with project, save project. And the other thing you might want to do is share this model with someone else. And the way this works is you click on create share link. Now this is a link that will send to the person who clicks it a copy of this model. They can't interfere with your model itself, but they will get a copy of this model in their browser when they click this link. So you simply click that copy button to the right, and then you can email it or post it or do anything else with it. So there's very much more that you can do with the Sheetless software than I've shown you in this very short demonstration, but I hope that's at least given you an idea of the kinds of things you can achieve. Notice it's very much easier to see what's going on in a model like this than it is to try and figure out what's happening in rows and columns in a spreadsheet. And when you get to significantly larger models, the human brain cannot get its head around complicated models where you've got several of these stock and flow things, and you've got several of these feedback relationships between the variables and stocks in a model. So that's why these dynamic models are so powerful.